Hello and welcome back to the NUFC Opinion Blog. Today I'm joined by a Newcastle legend, it's fair to say, in Warren Barton. Warren, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I've had a good holiday period, Christmas period, and looking forward to the new year. So yeah, all good, my friend. Nice to speak to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Now, obviously, it is the dream of many young people in the world to become a professional footballer. But how did it happen for you? How did you get started in football and how did you find your way into the game?
Well, I think, like you said, particularly in the UK, football is the number one dominant sport, and I was a younger sibling to an older brother who's 4 years older than me, John. And we used to go over the park and play football 1-against-1. He then joined a local football team, and then they was looking for younger players. So my brother, as I said, really since we was 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, would go out and play over the park until morning to night. And then he got me into a team, and then it just snowballed from there. Really, you just start playing locally for club team. Obviously, then you start playing at the school, county, district, etc., etc. So that was really it, my brother. But coming from a family that was Arsenal fans at the time, we'd go to the Arsenal games, and football was in the TV, not as much as it is now, obviously, but it was around all the time. It was the number one sport, with cricket and rugby coming second and third behind it. But like everybody, I think football was the number one sport. And as I said, my older brother used to take me over the park and kick the living daylights out of me. So he taught me how to run a bit quicker. So it was good.
Very good. Now, obviously, when you were sort of getting into your professional playing career, you spent a lot of your younger days at Wimbledon. And so what was it like there? Was that really good for your development as a player?
Yeah, I'll go back a little bit more as well, my friend. Being at 16 years of age, and you've just reminded me before we come on air that you're a young man.
I am.
And way before you was even thought of. But your dad, I remember, was a scheme called the YTS. It was a government scheme, and it let the lower teams allow to have young players, apprentices at the time, to go and play. So I was a young apprentice at Leighton Orient with Frank Clark, who's obviously a Newcastle legend as well. And he was the manager. And unfortunately, after I finished my YTS, which is a 2-year scheme, which takes you to 16 to 17 years of age, he said I was too small. He wasn't going to take me on. So then I dropped down to play non-league football, which was a great learning curve. As a 16, 17-year-old boy, walking into a changing room with builders, electrician, policemen, whatever it may be, car mechanics, going out there. And if you win the game for £5, that was their bonus for the weekend. So it learnt the hard way. And then coming from non-league into a team like Wimbledon, the crazy gang, being in it was the old first division, which is the Premier League now. I got scouted from the lower leagues, and there was very much come from with Dave Bassett from Division 4, 3, 2, 1, and then into Division 1, and stayed in the Premier League. So they still had that non-league mentality of sticking together, working hard. We maybe haven't got the ability, but we've got the spirit and the work ethic, and people like Vinnie Jones and John Fashioon that was big characters, big leaders. So it was I wouldn't say it was an easy transition, but it was a lot easier than it would be, say, walking into a changing room at Southampton or Norwich, that type of team. They was very much like, we all work together, we work hard. The pre-seasons was tough. We stick together. We'd win a lot of games in the tunnel as well, physically and mentally. We'd win games. So that was really a great experience. And I went there as a young boy. Non-league made me into a young man, sort of young boy, and then going into Wimbledon turned me into a Premier League player. And I'm grateful for that. Played with, as I said, some good players, had some good coaches, and really set me up for the move to go to a big club like Newcastle 4 or 5 years later.
That sets me up for my next question very nicely. So when Kevin Keegan and Newcastle come calling in 1995, is that just an offer you can't refuse, presumably?
Well, it's been linked throughout that time, and Wimbledon was always a team that would sell players, whether it was Keith Curle the year before, John Scholes, Terry Phelan that had gone to Manchester City, John Scholes to Liverpool. So I was like, if you like, the next on the conveyor belt to move on. And I've been getting into the England setup with Terry Venables, getting ready for Euro 96. So there was a lot of interest, whether it was Celtic, Man City, Everton, Sheffield Wednesday, Arsenal as well. I spoke to David Dean. But I met Kevin Keegan on a bank holiday Monday, and he just come down and said, come and join a big club. And obviously he'd spoke about Les Ferdinand. They'd already had people like Andy Cole and Peter Beardsley playing, Rob Lee up there. So meeting them players as well with the England setup and talking to them and understanding what was going to happen up there, it was quite an easy transition to make. And as I said, with Kevin Keegan, he showed straight away that he wanted to sign me. Wimbledon accepted the offer, and it was a very, very easy decision to make, and one that I've thoroughly enjoyed. And it was exciting times, as I said, at being part of the entertainers.
Yeah, and you mentioned those players there. You mentioned Rob Lee, Les Ferdinand, just to name a couple. David Ginola, of course, as well. And so, what was it like to be a part of that and be in that team that was, of course, dubbed the Entertainers?
Well, first and foremost, when we first went out, the likes of Lee Clark, Steve Howie, Steve Watson, Robbie Elliott, Peter Beardsley, they're all local, people that are from that area. They made it pretty clear pretty quickly what you're playing for and who you're playing for. And that's something that we thrived on. The likes of Les, myself, David, Shaka, David Batty, Tino Espria. We thrived in that environment. And with the likes, as I said, with Rob Lee, Philip Albert, Darren Peacock, Steve Howie, Bez, Pavel Cernacek, them type of players that was already at the club, it was seen to take us to that next level. So it was a very exciting time. It was sometimes surreal, some of the football that we was playing and the way that we was playing. It just come easy. And the fans and the excitement in the city, it was just like a wave of enjoyment. And it was a pleasure, being at the training ground 5 days a week was there early. There was 4,000 or 5,000 people watching us train at Maiden Castle. It used to take you 30, 40 minutes to get out your car and get into the training ground, but there was more people at the training ground sometimes than my Wimbledon games in a Premier League game. So for that point of view, and the shirts that had come out, the Adidas shirt, the Grandad collars, 5,000 people waiting to get a shirt at midnight at the club shop, 10,000 people on the season ticket waiting list. So it was, we was box office, the TV on the Sunday, the Monday night football. It was just a pleasure and an honour to be involved in that time, because it was pretty much part of the Premier League history. I know we didn't win it, and there's not a day go by that we don't think about that and don't regret that, for the fans, for the city, for Kevin. But we give it a bloody good go, and it's part of the Premier League history of that time of being part of, being called the Entertainers is something that we should be proud of.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned, of course, that Newcastle didn't win. Of course, we were kept to the post by Manchester United in 2 seasons running, of course. But despite that, is it presumably one of the highlights of your career to have been part of that?
Yeah, I mean, as a young boy growing up, I dreamt about playing in an FA Cup final. I dreamt about playing for England. Obviously Champions League was something as you got older that came something to playing in the European Cup. And to be able to say I've done that, obviously I'm very proud of it, particularly where I come from, to play knocked back twice, being told you're too small at 13 and 16, and then to go and play for your country and go and play for a club like Newcastle for over 220 appearances and represent your country. There's no doubt the highlight. And as you being only, a young fella, 21, 22 years of age, we're talking about that now, which is in a way great, but is in a way pretty sad, because a club like Newcastle and what we was trying to build, we should have built on that, but unfortunately we didn't. But it's still, as I said, a great memory. It was the best time of my life. My kids and the way we was treated up there, my wife, and when we moved up there, playing with the likes of, I didn't mention them, but Gary Speed come afterwards, Shay Given, Roberto Solano, Lauren Robert, Kieran Dyer, Craig Bellamy, to play with them type of players as well, exciting young players, was fun to be around. And to top it all off, you played with an Alan Shearer. So it doesn't come better than that. The only thing, as I said, what was missing would have been that medal, or a few medals. We played in a couple of FA Cup finals as well, and lost against a team that doubled, the Arsenal team, and a team that won the treble with Manchester United. So it just sums up a little bit of how tough it was to get over that finishing line.
Indeed. Now, of course, Kevin Keegan left midway through that second season when you were challenging Manchester United for the title. And so what was it like when Kevin left and then Kenny Dalglish came in?
Well, for someone like Kenny to come in was great. He was well respected with the players. Obviously, Alan had played with him at Blackburn. He'd won the Premier League with them, and what he built. He'd actually tried to buy me when he was at Blackburn. I was on my way to go and meet Kenny Dalglish, so I knew he valued me as a player, which was obviously quite nice. But it was devastating for Kevin, because we'd gone up there for the club, obviously, but Kevin had been the initial first person, the first impression that we'd met. Les was the same, David was the same, and Kevin was a manager that wanted to meet the players before they signed. So a lot of it was, we was there for him, Tino, David Batty, etc., etc. So from that point of view, it was tough. You know, Terry McDermott and Arthur Cox took the next couple of weeks training, and it was like you was mourning someone, like someone had died and left, because it was such an emotional time to be with Kevin, and he was such an emotional manager. And for his own reason, he felt that he had to leave because the club was maybe going in a different direction. And Kenny come in, and Kenny was a different character, but still a football man, still was very good with the players. But obviously he had to balance books, and, you know, the entertainers, as they was, David, Tino, Les, started to drift apart. So that was the time. But I'd like to remind people that Kenny got us second in the league again. We went to Arsenal and won 1-0, and we end up, you know, finishing second and getting into the Champions League. We beat Barcelona, the mighty Barcelona, first time a Champions League game. We beat them 3-2 with the likes of Figo, Rivaldo, Luis Enrique. And he got us to a cup final as well. His style of football wasn't exactly to the style that Newcastle wanted, but it was affected and got us there. But it was a real different transition. But as players, you know, we're resilient. We just sort of get on with it. And, you know, after a couple of games, couple of training sessions, I mean, Kenny Dalglish is a legend. You know, what he's achieved in the game. Yes, he didn't maybe have the same personality and charisma as KK, but KK's a unique person in his way. He understood the club, but Kenny was successful in his own way. But the style of football, maybe towards the end of his reign, wasn't to what the fans and the club was expecting. And obviously, when you lose the likes of David, Les, Tino, them type of players, you are going to leave a big void, because there was top class players and good people. More importantly, you know, fantastic people as well.
Yeah. Now, of course, after Kenny, there was Ruud Gullit, and there was all the things with the atmosphere within the club at that point. And so when Sir Bobby Robson came in, was that something like a relief essentially after some of the troubled times that had been in that period?
Well, it was like a volcano was going to happen with Ruud. You know, he had no respect for some of the players, and particularly, you know, Rob Lee and Stuart Pearce and Nikos Davizes. They was pushed into training with the kids, even with Alan Shearer and Duncan Ferguson dropping them before, particularly Alan before a game of the magnitude of Sunderland at home. You know, you just don't do that. You know, he's Alan Shearer, but arguably the best number 9 that's ever played in the Premier League, and the top goal scorer as well. And the attractive, sexy football wasn't really happening. And Bobby come in just understanding what the club was about, what the fans wanted, and just had an aura about Bobby. And we all gravitated to him. And he just, his man management skills was brilliant. You know, he would treat everybody different, but everybody the same, if that makes sense. You know, we all knew what the structure was of how he wanted us to play, but, you know, come times me, Gary, Shay, Alan, Rob would treat us different to the likes of Nikos. You know, whether it was Nobby Solano and players like that, he would all treat us differently, but all got the same out of us. And, you know, just to prove a point, you know, he turned up on the Thursday, Bob, in his shirt and tie on, come and met us all on the field, and just asked Alan the simple question: why do you keep coming to get the ball? And Alan, being Alan, said, well, the other fella told me to come short. And Bobby went, no, I want you facing the goal. So we played Sheffield Wednesday on the Saturday, and Alan gets 5 goals, and we win 8-0. So that's how effective someone like Sir Bobby could be. And then it just, again, snowballed from there with his way of thinking. He brought Kevin Gallagher in for £500,000 just to relieve the likes of Kieran Dyer and Craig Bellamy. So they wasn't playing every minute of every game for Newcastle, trying to get up the league. It just relieved them a little bit. And then he moved things on. Jermaine Genius coming for Rob, and Aaron Hughes coming for myself. And then the transition started, and then we started getting back in the Champions League. But he was just a gentleman in the way he done it. You know, even when he left me out, you know, he did it in a way that you felt like, you know what, it took me a couple of years, but he was right what he did at the time. And just a great man and a great football man, and we miss him. And what was done to him towards the end of his time at Newcastle is pretty much unspeakable, because he was he loved the club. He loved being around Newcastle. He loved the North East. He was like a young kid every single day at training. And as I said, learned so much off of him, not only as a coach, but as a person as well.
Yeah, indeed. Now, when you left Newcastle in 2002, was that saddening? Of course, we went to Derby and had some good times there, but was it sad to leave Newcastle after so long being at the club and all the success that you had there?
Yeah, it was, because I never wanted to leave. It was time, but as I said, looking at it and the way that Bobby had left me out, and he said, look, you know, 6 months ago you was captain of the club and one of the players week in, but I have to make a decision. What's best for the club going forward? And he said to me, look, you could still do, be on the bench and maybe not play and do the academy work and start. But I was like 33 years of age and I still felt I had a lot to offer. And Derby come in with John Gregory and offered me a 2-year contract. And I said to Bobby, at the end of it, I want to play. I want to go out there. And I went and played another 60, 70 games. So, I felt like I could play because you're a long time retired. And he understood that and he was great. And they let me go, no problems. And as I said, John Gregory come in and it was a tough time at Derby. They were just trying to survive in the Premier League and financially they left themselves wanting the following season. So going from a club like Newcastle, where for 7-8 years it had been stability, playing, challenging, to go to a club like Derby where we was fighting to survive, fighting to pay wages as well because the way the club was run. And I was involved with the PFA, I was on the committee and the chairman. So there was a lot of work off the field. I was doing more than on the field, but it was a great football club, good people, great fans, a proper football club with the fans that are involved. And, it was tough times, but I enjoyed my 2.5 years that I was there.
Yeah. Now, just going back to Newcastle once again, how special was the atmosphere at St James's Park when it was rocking and to play in front of those fans?
Well, I think you've seen glimpses of it with the Burnley game, the Manchester United game. So if you can imagine, we had that for 8 years, every single game. Yes, sometimes we beat Bradford or Watford and we got booed off at the game because we only won 1-0. But the atmosphere and the excitement of people walking up the steps going to the game was there, and the roar before the kickoff, the anticipation. As I said, you travel away from home. We go to Ewood Park and we've got the record for away fans. We're going to Coventry, which is a tough place to go to, or Selhurst Park, and we've got the record for the away fans. So it's a special atmosphere, it's a special place. And obviously then it went to 52,000, so the roar is even louder and the expectations even higher. But as I said, we thrived in that environment and with them players. And we couldn't wait to play the games. Some of the players, I think in the past maybe 18 months with the COVID situation, they wouldn't have been able to handle the moans and the groans because you have to win them over. And we had to do that all the time. And the way that we played and how we played showed them that we was committed. And that's how you've seen in the recent weeks with the Burnley and Man United atmosphere, is that the fans can see the players are committed and giving everything. And, we haven't won every game. We haven't, by long ways, we're out of danger in the relegation zone, but they can see it. The fans can see there's an effort and there's a commitment. And someone like Joe Linton comes to mind straight away because 8 weeks ago, people was after him, but now, they love him for his effort. That's all you have to do. It's all, and that's where as players we feel like, just try, just give everything you've got and tackle and work and don't hesitate and don't, show your fear, show your commitment, and the fans will thrive off that. And that's what we've seen recently. And it was magnificent. It's walking down the steps and coming out. You can never mirror that, and it stays with you because it's such a special place.
Indeed, yeah. Now, of course, these days you're based in America, and so what made you go over there? And also, to add to that, what's it like? What's the football culture like over there in comparison to the UK?
It was a lifestyle change. Me and my wife had been coming out in vacations to the States throughout our time that we was playing and we was together. And as the kids got, a little bit older, we'd come on different trips again. And it was really, although it's been cloudy and rainy in the last few days, the sunshine here is 365 days a year. The climate's magnificent. It was quality of life. The kids would finish playing at school and then go down the beach for the next 4 or 5 hours. So it's a lifestyle change, and I love my time in England, and my family's still there and I miss them obviously, but quality of life here for my wife and the kids. Soccer, as it's called here, is growing. It's getting bigger and bigger, particularly in the last 5 or 6 years. It's on TV all the time, whether it's the Premier League, La Liga, Champions League, it's on all the time, Bundesliga. And you've seen the stadiums, the MLS is getting better, the quality is getting better, the coaching is getting better. The biggest challenge you've got, and unfortunately people in the UK can't mirror this, is that we touched on back home in England, you're competing against cricket and rugby. Over here, you're competing against a monster, which is the NFL. Throw on top of that, you've got the NBA, which is a massive sport. Throw on top of that, you've got a tradition of baseball, which is a huge sport. Look, hockey, more in the northeast of the country, is big. But unknown to me when I first come here, college sports is huge. College football is Alabama, Ohio State, these Clemson, these schools are really, industries that are, Fox, I work for Fox and do media. They just signed a deal called the Pac-12, which is on the West Coast, which is like UCLA, you go up to Stanford, Seattle, them areas. That was $1 billion. $1 billion for 10 years, which is surreal when you think it's college football, which is sport. So not only are you competing against your own sport, and women's sport here is huge as well in soccer. So not only are you competing in that with 4 major sports, but you're also competing with industries like college, which obviously back home relate to maybe Oxford, Cambridge, and Loughborough, maybe the ones that come to mind, and Durham. But other than that, that here they're massive businesses and cities really when you go to these schools. So Michigan, there's a school called Michigan. It's called the Big House. It's got 110,000 people that go and watch their football games week in, week out in Michigan. So that's where Tom Brady started. So that's what you're up against. But it is growing. It's getting bigger. It's stadiums are getting more soccer Pacific stadiums rather than seeing the football lines that you see. The American football lines on some of them. There's still 1 or 2 New England, but they're looking to go to more stadiums, and the quality's getting better. And the academies, reserve teams as well. There's another league called USL, there's no promotion and relegation. It's just a separate league, but it's still a competitive league that players can earn a wage from.
Yeah, very good. Now, coming back to Newcastle once again, and looking at the 14 years of Mike Ashley, of course, a bit more recent. How damaging, in your opinion, were those 14 years for Newcastle United under that ownership?
Yeah, it was really difficult. At the beginning, I think we all thought there was going to be, a way of movement with Glenn Roeder, and obviously Alan Pardew was there where they was competing. But slowly but surely, it started getting glimpses of being looked as a business, and rather than a football club that was trying to compete and challenge. And obviously the last probably 7-8 years have been very, very difficult for everybody, because I always think of the club is the heart and soul of Newcastle, the city. I'm talking about the city, the stadium, and the fans wasn't respected, and they're the heartbeat of the club. And when you put that into consideration, it had no heart, no soul. It was empty. I went there a couple of years ago with my youngest son, and we did a tour of the stadium. And I was embarrassed because it looked like it was rotting away. It was left to rot. And that was a couple of years ago. And obviously that was before COVID had kicked in. And, a silly thing like the new owners coming in and cleaning the windows made a big improvement. So, yeah, it was very tough because the image of the club was done as well. It was become a laughing stock. And about 18 months, 2 years ago, I come out publicly and got involved in the trust scheme with the supporters, and went on TalkSport, went on Sky, because the club looked weak and vulnerable, and everybody was ready to stick their boot in and give us a good kick in, and become a bit of a laughing stock. And that was never the club that I was involved in and thought of. And slowly but surely, you've seen a wave of support for the club with the fans, because even the fans were divided. The fans was like, well, do we stick with him? It's better we know him. Do we do this? It was just a real awful, toxic time at the place. And it's changed very, very quickly with the new ownership. They're saying the right things. They've been very positive. Eddie Howe's come in and working hard with the players on the training ground, seeing improvements on the field. We're still bottom. People are going to say that. Pundits are saying, well, you haven't improved, you're still there. But we've got a transfer window that we're looking to be very buoyant in and very positive. Looking at the performances against Manchester United, to be disappointed we didn't win 3 points. So it's tough, but we can change it around quickly. And I feel for the first time, probably in your time of supporting Newcastle, yes, that everybody is going in the right direction, whether it's the owners, whether the manager and the players and the fans, more importantly, that we're going in the right direction. Now, what will happen this season, we're going to have to stick together and ride it out, because it's going to be a tough one. But there is a light now that we can see. There is a vision that the club want, and the owners. The pressure's on them now, as I said, the owners. The fans have really supported the players. They've got behind Eddie. They've got behind the owners, and the owners have been great with their media, being transparent, speaking to people. So they've accepted and understanding what the club is, and Eddie's done that, speaking to supporters, being around, being honest when he's being asked to interview. So that's another thing, and really giving us a bit of credibility rather than just saying, well, they're better than us. We're just about surviving. We're just going to about, you know, that's never been a Newcastle way. Now, whether we fall flat on our face, we'll see, but we're going to give it a good go. And I just got a feeling we've got enough momentum and togetherness to get us over that line of staying in the Premier League, and then obviously building from that going forward. It's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen pretty quickly. You've seen what someone like Sir Bobby Robson do within 18 months of a club with Ruud Gullit, which was just stagnant really. With Ruud, we didn't have as many. The atmosphere wasn't great. The players, you know, was trying to do the best they can, but Ruud was, you know, dividing the players a little bit. And within, you know, 6 months, we was back continuing against the top four, and then a year later, we was in the Champions League. So, you know, it can be done pretty quickly, particularly with the fan base and the goals and the vision that they've got. You know, look what Kevin Keegan did.
Yeah, no, you're right in terms of this is the first sort of light I've seen at this club. From what I can remember, I think, you know, starting to understand football about sort of 5 years old, sort of 2005-6 time. I've really only had one decent season, and that was 11-12 when Newcastle finished fifth under Alan Pardew. Apart from that, it's always been the worry of relegation. Of course, 2 relegations as well. It's not been good at all. But as I say, as you very well say, this is light at the end of the tunnel. And so just to sum things up, with this January window coming up, do you think that if money is spent in the correct way or loan signings come in, Newcastle under Eddie Howe do have what it takes to stay up?
Yeah, when I look at the players' body language, the work ethic that you're seeing, you look at Norwich that have conceded goals, Watford a little bit disarray. You're not sure what's going to happen with them. Burnley will be Burnley. They're not really going to deviate. Leeds, they're not going to deviate the way that they play. With that momentum, obviously Wilson, not as long as we thought, but still a long-term injury. That's a blow. St. Maximin is a blow, but it looks like maybe when we're speaking now, the Everton game has been postponed and the Southampton one likely to be postponed. So that gives you a little bit more time to players to get recouped. And also the transfer window coming in. I think if you look at the players, they're talking about Trippier, maybe even a Connor Cody coming in, a Lingard, add a couple of other players to that with what we've got and Eddie's style of play and the atmosphere in the stadium. If you start winning your home games and grinding out performances, we can start climbing up the league. I think we all thought if we can turn the year being in touching distance of everybody, we'll give it a good go, because we know we're going to, and other clubs will do that. Other clubs are going to bring other players in. And that's where, going back to where I said, the owners have got the first time a little bit of pressure on them. Before, it's been a great, we love you, you're great, it's been brilliant. They've not really had to do too much. They've done things in the training ground, they've done things in the food bank, which has been great, you know, giving money there, helping the club. As I said, silly things like cleaning the windows and making the St James's Park feel like a proper football club again. But we all know as fans, we want it players on the pitch. So let's see where we are. Because I do dread that if the worst scenario is you go down, it can take you longer to get back to where we want to get to. If we can get back and stay up, you can do that quite quickly, the summer transfer window. If you go down, you're missing another transfer window, you're missing another one, and then you go back again, you're playing catch up all the time. So you've got to try and keep while the iron's hot and keep that momentum going.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Warren, thank you very much for those lovely answers. I really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you all very much for watching, and how are the lads?